And why were you interested in Hopkins?
I was interested in Hopkins from the noviceship because Donal O'Sullivan, Master of Novices, was very interested in Hopkins, and he introduced us to Hopkins. So when I came to be one of the editors of his collected works, I took him as the person in memory of Donal O'Sullivan, who gave me the appetite for Hopkins. I use a more elegant word, I think, than appetite. But anyway, that was the beginning. Then after that, I took Hopkins, I took English in my BA, and I developed a further interest in Hopkins. Then in philosophy, Scotus came up, of course, and then Hopkins came up in that, and that was my first paper I gave on Hopkins and Scotus. And so it knitted into my philosophy, and then it took off on its own, and I developed a great interest in Hopkins the man and Hopkins the Jesuit, and I'm still working on that.
And what can you talk about some of the things that he contributed that you were trying to explore or kind of draw out and share with people? What was relevant from him that you were writing about in your philosophy and all that other stuff?
Well, I think mainly the question, I was very interested in Hopkins the person, and I'm still very interested in what made him tick. What was the influence of the Jesuit life on Hopkins? And that is really my goal, to try to clarify that. And there's a theory going around that a man named Rutan, society Jesuit general for 25 years, corrupted the whole thinking of Jesuits. Now, I don't buy that.
And would one of those corrupted minds have been Hopkins? Is that the point?
Well, that everyone, they said, or this school would say, was corrupted by this man.
Right.
He gave a very narrow view of Jesuit spirituality, a very narrow view of life as it should be led into society. Now, I think that's grossly exaggerated.
But are you saying then that Hopkins was wider than that?
He was wider than that, but at the same time, he was...
But personally it affected him, but maybe in his poetry he escaped those constrictions.
That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly, that's exactly it, yes.
So to put it simply, what do you think people have to learn from Hopkins?
What is it to learn from Hopkins?
What have we to learn from Hopkins? Or what has the modern person, what does he have to say to the young person, the middle-aged person, any person of today? Why would you say they should read Hopkins?
I would say the same reason is why you'd say a person should do the spiritual exercises. Because Hopkins virtually is the poet of the exercises. That if you go through Hopkins, you go through the exercises. And I have found that myself in giving the exercises, particularly the long retreat, that you find yourself going through Hopkins' poems, but in fact you're going through the exercises. So that would be my answer there.
Is that just in that it covers the highs and lows of life, basically?
It does that, yes, exactly.
Can you take us through, I'm thinking of a wider maybe viewership for this, could you contextualise that? What is the arc of the weeks of the exercises? There's 4 weeks. Would you mind just taking us maybe through that in a kind of a general sense?
Yeah, you can go through Hopkins' poems in that way. You can take this poem that I can't put my hands on now illustrates that perfectly. But be the war within, the outward breast not outward sealed. Earth hears no hurtle then from fiercest fray. He sees the life of the spirit as a life of conflict. But the conflict isn't outside, it's within. And you might say it's the two standards of the exercise writ large in the poems. And that both brings out the meaning of the poems and also casts light on the exercises. Similarly, if you take his view of Mark, it's also a way of going through the gospel. You can take a theme in the gospel and follow it through in Hopkins, and particularly through Alphonsus Rodriguez.